16 Indian seafarers on the Marshall Islands flagged AM Pioneer are refusing orders to sail. Their ship is completely stationary, anchored off the UAE coast. The owners want the vessel to depart Ras Al Khaimah and transit south toward Fujairah, passing directly through the Strait of Hormuz. The crew is ordered to navigate this contested southern lane with all shipboard communications switched entirely off. The crew is fighting back. In mid-August 2026, the Forward Seamen's Union of India released a public SOS video from the ship's master. In it, he states unequivocally that the crew fears for their lives and will not put themselves at risk to complete the transit. For the shipowner, the delay is financially devastating. With the ship paralyzed, daily demurrage costs are soaring, bleeding capital and fracturing carefully timed supply chains with every hour the vessel remains anchored. This is not a mutiny. To understand exactly who has the final say in this standoff, we must deconstruct the specific legal architecture that protects maritime workers and determine if their refusal constitutes a breach of contract or an enforceable international right. Since the Iran conflict escalated in late February 2026, the Strait of Hormuz has become a war zone in all but name. Isolated commercial vessels operating in these waters are now navigating an active theater of military operations. The crew's fears are grounded in hard data. Over the past few months, commercial ships have been directly attacked. Seafarers have been killed. Consequently, commercial traffic through the strait has dropped to a fraction of its pre-war levels. The geopolitical reality is deeply fractured. Iran claims full jurisdiction through its newly established Persian Gulf Strait Authority, while the United States military is actively trying to run facilitated, protected corridors for merchant traffic. The maritime insurance market has priced in this risk. War risk premiums for vessels attempting the crossing have soared to commercially unviable levels. As a result, ports across the UAE look like this. Ships are stacking up, dropping anchor, and waiting for the threat to clear. When astronomical commercial losses collide with imminent threats to human life, the maritime industry does not rely on ad hoc negotiations. It relies on a layered legal framework to dictate exactly what owners can and cannot force their crews to do. The starting point for global seafarer rights is the Maritime Labor Convention of 2006, drafted under the International Labor Organization. It acts as a universal bill of rights for nearly the entire global fleet. We can visualize these legal protections as a three-tiered structure. The foundation is the international baseline. Under Regulation 2.5 and Standard A2.5 of the Convention, every seafarer is guaranteed the right to be repatriated at no cost to themselves under specific, clearly defined circumstances. One of those circumstances is detailed in Guideline B2.5.1. This guideline triggers the right to free repatriation specifically when a ship is bound for a designated war zone. The critical legal mechanism in this guideline hinges on 6 words: when the seafarer does not consent to go. Under maritime law, consent must be informed and ongoing. The fact that a seafarer is already on board a vessel or already geographically located in the Middle East does not cancel out their right to refuse entry into a conflict zone. This is not a soft suggestion. Flag states that have ratified the convention, including the Marshall Islands, where the AM Pioneer is registered, are legally mandated to enforce it. At this baseline level, the law is clear. Commercial pressure, supply chain delays, and operational necessity can never legally override a seafarer's lack of consent. But there is a loophole. The International Convention leaves the actual definition of a war zone up to national laws or specific employment agreements, which can create dangerous ambiguity. That ambiguity is resolved by the second layer of protection, the definitions set by the International Bargaining Forum, or IBF, which negotiates standards for global seafarers. In March 2026, the IBF officially classified the Strait of Hormuz, the Gulf of Oman, and the Persian Gulf as a designated warlike operations area. When a ship enters an area covered by this designation, the first major legal consequence is immediate. The seafarer gains the absolute right not to proceed any further. Exercising this right is heavily protected. Legally, refusing to sail into the red zone cannot be classified as a breach of contract. It is not insubordination, and it cannot be used as grounds for dismissal. The financial liabilities for the shipowner also activate instantly. The company must arrange and pay for the seafarer's full repatriation, and they must pay out compensation equal to 2 months' basic wage. These clauses are actively monitored and enforced by powerful international transport unions, who ensure shipowners comply with the designated boundaries. Once the IBF draws that line on the map, the subjective debate over whether a route is safe simply ends. The contractual protections activate automatically. For the 16 crew members of the AM Pioneer, their specific nationality triggers a third and final legal barrier. On July 15, 2026, the Directorate General of Maritime Administration of India issued a highly specific national directive, Circular No. 36. The circular explicitly directs shipowners and managers not to deploy Indian seafarers on any voyage that involves passage through the Strait of Hormuz until further notice. This binds any recruitment and placement services license companies operating out of India. If they are placing Indian crew, they are legally prohibited from putting them on Hormuz voyages. This national directive removes the shipowner's ability to negotiate. For Indian seafarers, the government has shifted the transit from a question of individual consent to a categorical prohibition. The company management may push back and demand the vessel sail, but under Indian regulatory law, proceeding with this specific crew into that specific strait is an illegal deployment. The structure is complete. Baseline international convention, active union designations, and strict national regulations all align in absolute agreement. So how does this legal theory translate to the physical reality on the water, right now? If you are a seafarer facing deployment into a conflict zone, execute this tactical playbook. First, put your refusal in writing. Second, explicitly cite MLC Guideline B2.5.1 and the IBF designation. Next, escalate immediately to your union, flag state authority, and the Directorate General of Shipping. Finally, never sign documents waiving your rights. For shipowners attempting to force the issue, the liabilities are severe. Pushing a non-consenting crew into a war zone invites immediate MLC complaints and port state control detentions. Beyond the regulatory strikes, you face reputational ruin and massive civil claims if a casualty occurs. The legally sound route is to repatriate the refusing crew at your cost and replace them with personnel who freely consent to the risk. Seafarers are non-combatants. The AM Pioneer crew is exercising a right anchored in 3 distinct layers of maritime law. This standoff proves that when ordered into a conflict zone, a crew's refusal is a binding legal reality that commercial interest cannot override.